Hi, I'm Guy Powell, and welcome to the next episode of the Backstory on Marketing. If you haven't already done so, please visit ProRelevant.com and sign up for all of these episodes and podcasts. I am the author of the newly released book, The Post-COVID Marketing Machine, Prepare Your Team to Win. And you can find more information on this at marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. Today, we're going to find out about the challenges of managing a brand to drive better barbecue. And so, what could be better than that as we get ready for the summer? And I'm definitely looking at buying one of these barbecues from Michael Bragg, who's my interviewee today from Recteq, based here in Georgia. So, we are talking with Michael Bragg. He is the performance manager for Recteq, and they are a Georgia based wood pellet grill manufacturer. So, with that, Michael, welcome. So glad to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for being here. So tell us your backstory on how you got into marketing.
Oh, it's fun. So, I've always envied, I guess, folks who have like my wife, for example, like knew she wanted to be a speech language pathologist when she was 10, or, a person who had a dad who was an accountant. It's like, I want to be an accountant. I did not have that story. Probably like most college kids, I was scrolling around majors and trying to figure out and testing on what sounded cool and in between going to different fun parties at the University of Georgia. But actually the way I fell into marketing was didn't know what I wanted to do as a major, and I went through the actual full bulletin at the University of Georgia to see all of the majors, from entomology to turf management to business, and I saw public relations and I was like, that sounds cool. And so I applied for it. So somewhat incidental in kind of getting my foot in the door, which is under the advertising and public relations department of Grady College at UGA. But that kind of started my journey. I went head first into the whole program, and really sort of liked it. And it's kind of funny. I had a public relations degree. I was in the public relations student society of at Georgia. So shout out to them. And I was the PR director for the PRSSA Student Association. Then as soon as I graduated, I wanted to go to advertising, which I should have just changed that major earlier on. But done a few stints at a few agencies. So I actually interned at 22 Squared, which is in Midtown here up in Atlanta. And then popped over to a smaller agency out of the Atlanta Tech Village. It's fairly startup-y, primarily focused on the account management side. I actually switched over to media after kind of putting on, my sort of do-it-yourself hat and learning Google Ads, because in our small 6-person agency, one of our clients asked us, "Hey, can y'all run paid search?" And like most agencies, we said yes without knowing the resources behind it. So I took the venture, put it on me to learn all these different things, and ran my first, I think it was like a few $100 paid search campaign, and that kind of blossomed into a media planning and buying career. So few agencies have been, actually was on the brand side for a hot second before actually eventually going to Recteq, but got probably a lot of my paid search experience at a place called Performix. It's owned by Publicis Group, the sort of performance marketing arm of them, working on brands like Quilted Northern, Dixie under the Georgia Pacific profile, Auric, Hoover, Dirt Devil in the vacuum space. But got an incredible opportunity after being at Performance for about a year and a half or so to come over to a smaller mid-sized agency called Vert, VERT. So Vert is actually out of the Morningside Atlanta in Atlanta, Georgia. I know probably not everybody is in Atlanta, but it's kind of the central part of Atlanta. So smaller boutique agency that has a lot of different capabilities. Media was the biggest department, but they didn't really have a person who was kind of leading the whole paid search expertise to be that subject matter expert there. So popped over to Vert, and worked on probably 30 or 40 clients, spanning the multi-locational restaurant side of things, CPG, e-commerce, insurance. I even worked for the sort of LinkedIn for dentists and dental hygienists, which was really interesting. So I got to work on a lot of different brands over there. And of course, utilizing my primary field, which is more on the paid search side, but also got to touch paid social, programmatic. I got even to do some podcast buys. Since it was really fun, since it was a smaller mid-sized agency, you really didn't get siloed in a specific channel. You got to do a lot of different things, as well as working alongside email and CRM folks, brand strategy folks, and like. So, I was at Vert for actually 3.5 years. Loved that place. Got to work on a lot of fun clients. Got to actually work on my alma mater, University of Georgia, their alumni association. So, and cool brands like Honda Power Equipment, working on their lawnmower side, but also their outboard engine side of things. First Watch, which is a brunch chain that started out of Florida, and at one point was like one of the fastest growing casual dining restaurants in the nation. So that's my backstory, has just been kind of a survey across a bunch of different industries and sectors. I focused on the paid media side, so I have been down and dirty, on the keyboards, running Google Ads campaigns for small clients, and then planning bigger, much broader campaigns for higher clients, and really focusing on the media side. I guess when my dad asked me like what I do, what I tell him is, when a business comes to me with their marketing budget, I tell them how to spend it, right? And how to optimize it. And I control the purse per se a lot of times on where you should put your dollars and why you should put your dollars there. So, like I said, I was at Vert for about 3.5 years. And I always knew I wanted to go brand side. Sorry, agency folks. I always wanted to be focused on one particular brand. And that one particular brand I had never actually heard of. And so I got an inquiry for a brand called Recteq, a small pellet grill manufacturer out of Augusta, Georgia. And they needed a person to handle kind of in-house all of their paid social and paid search. So I bid a really sad farewell to the agency life and jumped to the brand side, and started in June of 21. So I've been at Recteq for about a year, a little over a year and a half now. And kind of came over here, immediately took over paid search, grabbed up paid social, and then expanded to the programmatic side of things. And it's really grown from there. I handle all things Amazon now. I'm working with ops, finance, our IT e-commerce team to set up our website. So it's really been, if the agency side was the breadth of my career, this has really been the depth of my career. And super, super exciting about that. And I know that we'll kind of talk about some, words of advice that relate a lot to that. I've kind of gotten both sides of the table per se. And so, but yeah, I mean, that's my backstory, and, love Recteq, and, I'm excited to keep driving this challenger brand forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thank you for that. And, it's interesting. So you must have moved post COVID. Did you move virtually, or did you
Yes.
move in person, or how did that work?
I moved in person. So obviously the COVID outbreak really changed a lot of things, really shocking, right, to everybody. And we've all heard that. So I moved, our agency was, primarily, remote at the time, most of the folks in the Atlanta area. But with Recteq, we're kind of transient as well. We had a smaller office that we can come in remote. You can come in person if you want. I actually preferred kind of the in-person side. Maybe I'm a little bit more heterodox on that side of things, but we have a really small office, but that small office got too cramped, and we're in a bigger office now, up in Sandy Springs, Georgia. So, but yeah, it was somewhat of a COVID move at the time. I know that was a big time for a lot of people to be making some changes in their life. And, I had a fresh baby boy, a new house, and I decided to just round out the trilogy with a new job as well.
Yeah, awesome, man. That's a lot of stress, but also I guess a lot of fun, and especially
Yeah,
obviously a lot of things must be going well if you're taking over more and more pieces of the paid marketing channel.
absolutely.
So now that we're kind of out of post COVID and now moving into the, I don't know, the new normal. So what kind of interesting opportunities are there that you see in brands growing their paid marketing in this new environment?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because there's also a lot of pressures and challenges with it. But I guess, some opportunities that we've seen on the Recteq side, or I guess particularly on my side, is like we're a fairly scrappy team, and there's not a lot of things that I can't pull, and this is more of a paid search dorky thing, but I can't pull search term reports all the time. I can't be like changing ads all the time on the paid social side. So I know automation is a word that's thrown out a lot, but what that means tactically is leaning into specific tactics under certain partners that automate a lot of the task, like minor bid optimizations or creative optimizations that we've leaned into a lot. Particularly as an e-commerce brand, and we've relied on a lot of product feed focused ads, which allow us to basically spread our entire product catalog without having to make all of the tiny little, ad fingers for all of that. So those are, I guess, more specific examples to ladder up to the big word automation side of things. Other opportunities is just getting plugged into and connected to the latest, technologies that your main partners have. I'm sure a lot of people's budgets are still Google and Facebook, just like ours, or excuse me, Meta, as they want to be called. So leaning into stuff like Google's enhanced conversions, Facebook's I think it's conversions API, in order to, try to bridge the gap with this cookie loss for the attribution side of things. Some other opportunities as well that we're trying to reinvent is like, if first party is becoming a lot more important, of course, you need to develop better strategies to acquire and sort of enrich that first party data as well. So whether that's, looking into your first CDP or CRM, we aren't quite to the CDP space just yet, although, I'm advocating for that, to, like I said, acquire, develop the right incentives to acquire good, compliant and transparent first party data, so people know that this is what you're doing, offering some sort of a value exchange there, and again, being privacy compliant and enriching it too. I mean, one exercise that we've gone through is segmenting the entire barbecue grilling audience, right? And what we're trying to do is make sure amongst all of our current customers and prospective customers that we can categorize them in such a way, without being I guess too assumptive about it, categorize them in such a way so we can market to them effectively, and again, like I said, in a privacy compliant and transparent way. I would say a big opportunity for brands is like the TV space, specifically on the CTV side, is pretty easy to get into. Even if, I think for a while, and especially when we were on the smaller agency side a few years ago, it's like, oof, TV is like sort of cost prohibitive. It's maybe creative prohibitive, and not to mention just like from a planning perspective, it was really tough. But the CTV space, especially with some partners, like making them like a Google Ads like experience platform, has made it very easy to go into that space. And so like, I definitely see that as a bigger opportunity for, smaller mid-sized brands to get in the TV space before they thought they could maybe get into there. I'm trying to think of a few other ones, but obviously it's not necessarily an opportunity as much as it is a sort of mandatory thing, is if you haven't really started testing non-third-party cookie reliant targeting techniques, or not techniques, but targeting strategies like contextual or custom whitelist, do it now. I know, as a performance marker, a lot of times it's like, if A performs better than B, then we strike B. And we know that sometimes some of these non-third-party cookie reliant audiences don't perform as well sometimes, but that's just, we have to kind of progress forward, because that's going to be completely gone away once Chrome finally does away with the cookie, or I don't know, when they keep pushing it back another year and another year and another year. But I know we've talked to partners that like Reclaim, for example. It's like, even if we're in kind of a stasis right now with not many changes, there's a lot of legislation being put forth state by state that might change your idea of what to test right now. I think a lot of people are just like, well, just wait until Chrome finally deprecates it, but that's probably not the right thing to do. You need to start getting ready for the final change, because Chrome, we say, I think, is 60% of the browsing, but it might be only 30% of your customers that are browsing from Chrome. That was something that was kind of eye-opening to me when we figured that out. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of interesting opportunities that are they're just new, but also that are, I don't want to say kind of forced at the same time too, that you need to start getting more comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen even with some of our clients that paid digital has already started to suffer in terms of its
Oh yeah.
ROI and effectiveness. And so it is kind of fascinating. Do you see that also impacting paid social, or is it just going to impact paid digital, or is it really across the digital spectrum?
I think, I mean, it's across the board. I mean, paid social, I think a lot of times, like I'm going to focus primarily on Facebook, Instagram, Meta. It's a lot of paid social. It's not all of them. I mean, TikTok's starting to, grow at a faster
Yeah.
pace, of course. But, it's definitely impacting them. Although the conversion sort of modeling, the way that they set up to attribute ones, in my opinion, a lot of times can be quite deceptive. Like modeled conversions, what they think they actually
Hmm.
drove. And to the average Joe who's maybe running their first paid social campaign, they're not going to understand the differences between that. And they're going to see a 14x ROAS and probably put all of their chips in one basket. So,
Hmm.
it's affecting all channels, but there's kind of some uniqueness amongst partners where sometimes it requires a little bit more nuance to understand the actual numbers behind it. And one pressure that I get a lot of times is, hey, look, ROAS, or excuse me, Facebook's ROAS is amazing. Why aren't we putting more money into that? Well, there's a lot of caveats and a lot of caveats to add to that, and a lot of grain of salt type decisions that need to be made, that are just really tough to explain really quickly to a non-marketer, right? Think of a boardroom. Think, the questions that I get from my CEO, from my person who's a director of operations, who sees the reporting that I put forth, and it's like, well, why aren't we doing this? I think it's because people are still operating under the assumption that paid digital was just so easy to put a dollar in and get a very quantifiable $4, $5, $6 out. But really that $4 or $5 or $6 out is not, the picture is a lot more opaque than it was maybe just a few years ago. And that's a huge challenge for me. We're owned by a private equity firm. And so, I can't give them long, convoluted answers with a lot of caveats and asterisks. I have to give them the no BS answer. And sometimes those no BS answers have a lot of context behind them that I just simply don't have enough time to explain. And that's got to be very frustrating from an investment standpoint, especially if you're the one who maybe you have a personal stake in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when the outside investor is basically investing probably primarily in growth, and growth comes through marketing and sales, depending upon if you have a sales team.
Yeah.
But, it's going to come through marketing. And so then that money, they want to be able to justify it. If they're going to put in 1 million or 10 or $100 million into that business, they want to see, well, what was the ROI on that? Because I might want to give you
Yeah.
another 100, or I might want to
Yeah.
do something else with the business. But I want to see that money is actually absolutely delivering a very strong and positive ROI.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, just curious, do you split the media that you're doing between, let's say, brand building versus performance marketing, or are you right now strictly focused on performance?
So, no, actually, this year we've done a much better job. This has been a push by me, really, in the company, and then amongst others, to split out those dollars effectively. Because I think for the longest time, it was all performance marketing dollars. Like, and they kind of viewed
Mm.
every dollar spent as a performance marketing dollar, whether it was us sponsoring an event or doing like maybe a CTV ad, which was probably not the best model to look at. But now, moving forward, we have performance marketing dollars and we have brand investment dollars. And I always like to sort of reframe the conversation in this is like the performance marketing dollars is demand right now, and brand investment is future demand, right? To think about that, like, and not just necessarily future demand, but establishing a brand image, having better awareness. I mean, we are, amongst the very crowded grilling and pellet grilling space, relatively smaller, unknown brand. So there's a lot of brand awareness dollars that need to be invested in that. But it's tough because I can understand that brand investment dollars it's a long-term play. And when you're talking about especially right now when things are a little bit challenged and we're kind of having some post-COVID blues with luxury goods. You want to invest the money that's going to have that immediate return. And to some extent, the performance marketing side is still that, although it's really tough. It's getting tougher to measure that immediate impact. But yeah, I mean, we are splitting that up between that performance marketing dollars and brand investment dollars. And I think finally we're developing that discipline to say, not have those questions like, after doing a brand investment, says like, what are the sales? What are the sales? We're trying to train that discipline to say like, no. We're measuring this up. The KPIs for this are much different from this side of the house of things. So, and it's really exciting because, like I said, we're still a relatively unknown brand. So there's a lot of work to be done on this. I mean, we think that this is fairly good and established, and this is just a flywheel that we need to get in a way that's going to continue to capture demand, fish in the ponds where we're going to be pulling a lot more fish out, take bigger slices of the pie as the pie gets bigger. But then on the brand investment side, just becoming known at the point of consideration amongst these folks. So
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of liken it to, I like your the flywheel kind of a analogy, because I liken the brand piece as making the flywheel bigger. Not
yeah,
necessarily to move faster, but because it gets bigger, then that means you're also capturing more fish in the pond. So absolutely, I think that makes a lot of sense. So
yeah,
you mentioned that the cookies are going away. I think people would kind of call them a trusted identifier. So
yeah.
what do you see the marketing and advertising industry doing as that happens, and this cookie-less future and the trusted identifier now has to either change more or just be ignored?
Yeah, I mean, trusted identifier, right? Like, I think there are ways I feel like that technology stacks are trying to get around it, like device ID or all this stuff. But like, maybe we just need to rely a little bit more on first party that's given after good consent, right? And very clear consent, like the email side of things. I think that's still a golden piece of first party data that if you can acquire that in a sort of value based way, offer some sort of incentive for a person to give some of their data, like an email, like a phone number. I'm kind of back and forth of which one is maybe the best trusted identifier. That is one that, like, for sure that it has been given with consent or with full consent. And if you have some questions, that run over that, right, and make sure that it is very, very clear what you're doing with that person's first party data. So you're giving it consent, and B, it taps into a pretty easy marketing channel, which is I don't primarily work on the email side, but once you have a person's email has really
Mm-hmm.
great ROI there. So that you have kind of consent built in with that, but then also you immediately can tap into a marketing channel that's going to hit them in a way, that's, it costs me to spend more. It costs me to activate another channel or activate another campaign and audience. It's just opportunity cost, or a person to send another email or create a flow with different things. I kind of would be remiss if I didn't mention kind of the phone number as well. As a sort of trusted event, again, consent, if you can get that set of things. And I think I personally am a little bit more hesitant about giving my phone number. So I definitely want to know exactly why it needs to be done. But some good one brand that I saw the other day, I mean, I think it was a brilliant way to capture first party data. Was, I had the normal pop-up like, hey, 10% off for the email. I put in my email, and then immediately the next prompt was like, we'll give you another 5% if you give us your phone number, and this is what we're going to send you for your phone number. And I thought that was brilliant, because that it got me in with some incentive, and then like I said, acquired it, and then it enriched that first party data about myself a good bit more. Because I know when you start to, as a paid media person, I'm using our first party data and activating it with Google, with Facebook, with my programmatic partners, the more data, the better, right? Sometimes just email doesn't cut it. When you're, trying to match customer lists to other partners, sometimes you need a little bit more information in order to have the match rates be a good bit higher. So Google and Facebook are pretty dang good at that. I know that there's other tools. I know you mentioned the LiveRamp ID. I've definitely been thinking about that. It's maybe a little bit too, it's pretty high cost. And then the match rate is a
Yeah.
little bit tougher right
Yep.
now. But I do think that over time they'll get better and better and better. But yeah, I mean, it sucks because the third party cookie was good, but and you know, we're hearing the voice of the people right now,
Mm.
kind of demand a little bit more transparency in being advertised towards. So we must yield. This is not something that we can
Yeah.
grovel about and doing in such a way, because you're going to really, I think there's definitely been countless research done. You know, I was seeing it in Google's like privacy summit. It was like, you know, consumers that think that, you know, a brand is broken their trust, right? Like they're gone. They're leaving them for good. So good luck trying to get those folks back.
Well, you know, it's interesting though, if you think about, and maybe it does require a little bit of thought, but you have brand marketing on one side, you know, to drive awareness and drive some brand consideration and brand relevance. And then on the other side, you have performance, which is more or less about how do I get these people to convert. And
Yeah.
when you lose that cookie, then you know you've got to do a lot more on brand awareness, and maybe that brand awareness is defined as how many people are willing to give me their email and pay 10% for the email and another 5% for the phone.
Yeah.
And then that kind of rounds out your you know your picture, because then there's still going to be people that you're going to have brand awareness with, let's say, that
Mm-hmm.
won't give you their email. And then so how do you capture them in their buying process, so that when they're ready to buy a new grill or a replacement grill or whatever it happens to be, that they're now going to consider Recteq versus something else.
Yeah, I mean, like you are right, and I think it's something we're realizing right now as a 2023 is like we didn't spend enough like on the brand investment dollar side of things. So we're really trying to put our money where our mouth is to make a more memorable experience, because there's just a host of different, messages. I think it's like kind of cliche, break through the clutter or like scroll stopping creative, but it really is true. I mean, like there's just so many different messages and so many different formats that people get on a daily basis.
Mm.
So, maybe it's just going back to the basics and making creative that is, maybe we were too focused on targeting and getting to the right people and focused too less on the actual creative being relevant and impactful to those folks. So, and this is me saying this as a performance marketer who probably over focused on the targeting side of things without, presenting the, without presenting an actual good message. So, and there's a lot of implications from that. I'm an e-commerce brand, so like what our website looks like, what the experience looks like. So a lot of implications from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's actually an interesting kind of a thought process to, as those cookies go away, is to kind of build out the map in terms of all of those different pieces
That's
that kind
cool.
of go together, and some of them that don't. So then, given that, especially when you've got outside investors in the company, so how do you set your marketing objectives, and how do you then measure against them to determine if you're meeting them?
Ooh, well, I think one thing that I've learned is, folks in the boardroom don't really care about CTR, CPC, and some of these things. And that's not to say they're not important, but you have to make sure when you're developing those more micro metrics that it's all laddering up to a business goal and a business case for this. So, and it's more challenging when the ROI is hard to prove a lot of times. So, but I think understanding the segmentation between like what is the broad business goal and then flowing down from there and make sure everything is connected. We want 30% increase in email acquisition. We want a 30% increase in our email database because we've done the analysis and every new incremental email is X dollars and that flows up to this. So first, having just everything ladder up and be perfectly organized. And sometimes that requires a good bit of work and some math. But when you prove out the business case, it makes it a much easier pitch to get those extra dollars to go forward with it. So, and then another one, going back to the basis, like what is a SMART goal? The acronym, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Those things have just got to make sense a good bit more. So that's how we determine objectives. Is it laddering up to our bigger business goal? And does it fit under those parameters? Like, is it achievable? Does it make sense? So, because that's how to prove out the business case, especially to executives who need to know the bottom line, right? Like, Michael, what is a 15% increase in CTR for our lookalike audiences? What does that mean for me? And when you can answer that question, it becomes a lot easier, like I said, to make the case for bigger, broader dollars. So you can actually start to throw your weight around in the marketplace.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, so moving forward, looking out over the next couple of years, then where do you see the biggest opportunity for you?
The biggest opportunity, I think I mentioned, reinvesting back in creative side of things. Particularly we've seen that video is a big driver for us. So, we're, definitely investing in the production quality and just the quality of our videos as itself. Now videos is that on the video side, it can be a little bit weightier than just getting a good, clean picture. It requires a little bit more production on it, but I see that as a big opportunity. And like I said, that kind of ladders up to just having a better creative strategy in the first place. I definitely think, considering these challenging economic times, retention is probably better than acquisition right now. We probably over focused on new customer acquisition, getting those new grills, which of course is the lion's share of our business. But we have accessories, we've got rubs and sauces, we've got a consumable associated with our grill, that being pellets as the fuel. So there's a lot of things that we can do in order to beef up those sides of our portfolio that really enriches the lifetime value of our current customers. I think one opportunity is just, if you haven't really developed your brand, develop your brand. What is the look, feel, and tone of different things? I'm saying these things as a performance marketer, right? This isn't my side of the house, but I know that one of the biggest drivers of my performance is the creative itself, and the actual brand itself, what it means. So, if you're flying around here with a very, sort of unestablished brand, it's going to have a short shelf life over time. It might be the hot thing now, right, for people to buy, but long term, like, what does it really mean for folks? I think I'm not going to say activated on it now, and is the Chat GPT side of things. I think it's like
that was coming up.
It's one of those I want to wait. I want to wait and see. I'm a wait and see type of guy. Like, it reminds me of the whole voice search craze a few years ago. Not that died out or anything, but everybody was just so like headstrong of like, we got to like start testing this right now as advertisers. And I don't know if it's there yet. I think we kind of maybe need to learn from others' mistakes, and maybe if you are a very risky like brand, like, go for it if that is kind of worth your brand image, because I know that there has been some factual related issues with GPT. And at a certain point, it does sound like an AI, right? And people, those subtle cues people can't pick up, but it's an AI. It's going to learn over time. It's going to get much, 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 much better. So I think it's an opportunity for, let's just say, aiding with content. I think people want to skip to the end and say, make Chat GPT the freelance copywriter for them. But I think it is good to use it, especially in the SEO and content side of things. So, those are ones that I'm seeing. I'm trying to think, of any others. I would say, big opportunity that we're tapping into is just developing that good recipe between external resources, i.e. agencies, and in concert with in-house teams. I was an agency person myself. I think a lot of times I view brands as everything was in-house, or like most things were external, but there's good hybrid models and gaps that you can fill in that satisfies both sides of the house, in a very good marriage, say. But a lot of fun opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I like your point about, increasing the quality of the creative. We did a lot of work with Affleck a number of years ago, and no question that the creative guy that came up with that duck just and took the risk to present it, and on the company side to take the risk and actually use it. It put the company on the map. That
Yeah.
whole campaign just absolutely incredible. So there's no question in my mind that creative can really, really make a brand, and it's not easy, and unfortunately it's not cheap. But you get that creative right, it can really make a difference. So sorry about that. So anyway, it's pretty critical as to how you use that creative.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you mentioned Chat GPT. I always used to talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence, and now I think Chat GPT is probably more so with the generative AI, and I think it really is generating content that never existed before, and that I think is a little bit different than the traditional definitions of AI and machine learning, where it was more of a kind of a statistical problem that you're just kind of using a certain mathematical tool to generate something. Whereas I think this to generate a result, as opposed to where Chat GPT is actually kind of generating whole new content. And I've
Yeah.
been really amazed at how good it is, and also how grammatically correct it is.
Yes. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, it's going to get better over time too. Like, I mean, I really think it is going to get better over time
Yeah.
with it. It's just like, I see it as like, I'm like, ooh, it seems risky, to do it right now. But I think just using it as a collaborative tool, like I said, I maybe think it is short-sighted to like immediately just be like, this is our freelance copywriter now, is this machine. But obviously that it speaks to the power of it. I think Bing, launched today with it in concert with itself. Obviously Google, for Google to respond and make Bard, like this is probably a huge thing. But I often wonder, I mean, is it the NFTs of last year, like super big hype that maybe dies a little bit, but maybe I don't know. I actually think it's gonna stick around and get better and better and better. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
right now I'm watching from an arm's length to see how it goes.
Well, and I guess the question is too is how do advertisers take advantage of it? Is it just like you said, a freelance
Yeah.
content writer, or is there a way to actually plant your advertising in there? And I don't think that it isn't obvious to me as to how that's going to work.
Yeah, the immediate use cases to me go to SEO, right? And not to make SEOs quake in their boots, but it's pretty dang good at helping you at least mine keywords, categorize keywords, and actually create content around it. It's pretty amazing. I don't think that it makes that side of the marketing house obsolete, but it definitely challenges a good bit. But I do think it's maybe in concert with some human oversight with it. But yeah, I mean, like I tried it out a little bit on, trying to seed some keywords and different stuff. And it's pretty impressive what it can do. From a research piece, like almost instantaneous, that
Mm-hmm.
might take a few days or a few weeks for SEOs to do. So maybe if you are a search engine optimizer, right, I would be a little bit scared about it. But that's the most immediate use case that I kind of saw it as.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I've been thinking about it as well. Could you write a book? Just have it write a book just to see, or write an article just to see what it does.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't get you as an advertiser, doesn't get you necessarily any, I don't know, additional sales yet. So I think there's another, a time, and kind of like to your point about waiting, there's still a little bit of time to go before advertisers can figure out a way to make money on that.
No, absolutely. So we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see. So
Yeah. So before we close, so what advice would you have for a young aspiring marketer to grow their careers?
yeah, so I mean, this is kind of the stuff that I've gathered, and I try to keep it fairly simple, but there's just like a few things that I have learned myself, right? That hopefully is applicable to, the younger folks out there. Say thank you. The super, super, super easy thing. Don't burn bridges. Don't leave a pile of bodies behind you on your way up the ladder. Just say thank you to folks. always remember behind your talent was probably a supporter, educator, motivator of yours, either directly or indirectly in a way that you didn't realize. I feel like as I've gotten older, I've sort of like retroactively think back to the people who are influential to me that I did not appreciate them as much. So number one, say thank you. Number two, say sorry. Say sorry. Take ownership. You know, there was an impactful book that I read a few years ago called Extreme Ownership. It's written by a Navy SEAL. It's a very interesting book about really taking ownership for when you mess up. And I think there's a lot of respect to be gained when you tell somebody, I'm sorry, I messed this up. Here's how I'm going to fix it. You know, when I applied that, I was really scared to apply that in a work setting. But when I did, I think there was a lot more respect and a lot more understanding. When you can come forth and say, hey, this is my fault and this is how I'm going to correct it, a lot of people will understand you. That doesn't necessarily mean they won't be maybe frustrated about the thing, but I think getting out ahead of something like that is important. This is a funny one. I always like to say, I like to say, take out the trash. And what I mean by that is I never want to look at a task, a project, and say that I'm above that project or tasks. There are many things that need to be done. Now, of course, as you progress, again, I'm speaking to a younger audience, like take any opportunity, but as you progress, you need to learn how to delegate, of course, but, you know, make the coffee, you know, do the different things, right? Like fill out the spreadsheets, know your value, of course, but, you know, I always thought it's funny when I was looking for an internship, like almost every internship said like, you won't be making coffee. Like, who cares? Make the coffee, like do those different things, which build that character for yourself. Number four, shut up and listen. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. Don't formulate what you're about to say to a person before they're done making their point. Like it's just as simple as that. Don't wait to be told what to do. This is a big one for people going into their first jobs. I think like, and I understood this, like initiative comes at a premium for folks, because I think a lot of people go into a job and are like, okay, I just wait to be told what to do. And to a certain extent, like you will have a task list, but sometimes like people like me, like I don't necessarily have time to handhold you through everything. So ask me what you can do for me, or just take the initiative and say, hey, you know, like I wanted to understand our competitors. Here's a presentation I put together of like what I'm understanding with our competitors. Or, you know, hey, I saw that this folder was a little messy. I organize it in such ways. So like, just don't wait on to be told what to do. Few last things. Understand a person's currency, as I like to say. So what's valuable to them? How can you help them? How do they communicate? What is their work love language, as I like to say? So like, what is their currency to them? Is it a bulleted email? Is it just a Slack communication, or excuse me, like a Slack Teams message real quick? Is it a text to say, hey, you know, is there anything you need for this meeting? Especially when you're working with folks, you know, that's your VP level, your boss, your manager. Understand their pressures. What do they need from you in order to do their job well? Because I think somebody told me, like, if you can make the person above you look good, like you'll do great. you'll keep going up, and people should understand that. And last one, this is simple. I didn't take a finance course when I was at the University of Georgia. Learn business. If you're a marketing person, you're an advertising nerd right in college right now, take finance, take business, understand how a business works, because you know, you can of course learn that from the school of hard knocks, right? From being in a brand or being in a smaller agency. But, you know, I think a lot of times, especially when I was in the agency world, I really didn't understand business. Like I understand, I'm like, okay, X client, you know, they're a restaurant, right? This is how they make money, but like not like things like EBITDA and their contribution margins and different things. Like that helps you understand the different pressures cross department. You know, like one thing that I work closely with our finance department, and, you know, with the team that develops promotionals. And it's like, it sounds cool if we were to sell a grill with this, but from a financial perspective, we make negative money if we did that, you know? So, and that kind of stems from having some business savviness and some understanding of how just the finances of a company work. You don't have to have a finance degree, but at least have some rudimentary knowledge of how that operates. So that's my quick hitting list that I hopefully
Well,
is simple.
that is yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic list, and definitely agree with all of those. I think you're right, though. I think the last one especially is understanding what is profit, what is sales, what's contribution margin, just getting some of those things that are so critical to the business as a whole, so that you can really see, what's driving the business and what's driving the actions in the rest of the company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, Michael, to your first bullet is just say thank you. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me get you 3 times on that. And
Thank you.
so glad we were able to set this up. And thank you so much for participating. So, where would you like viewers to go to learn more about Recteq?
So recteq.com, recteq.com. I think we say often replicated, but never or often duplicated, never replicated. But what I mean by that is, go check us out. We definitely believe we have the best best grills on the market, that are versatile, convenient, easy to use, and really up your game from a flavor perspective. And if you get a little bit confused along the way, we have a customer service department right here in Georgia that'll do anything from make the most minor troubleshooting issue to your grill, all the way to recommend what brisket, how you should choose a brisket at Costco. So yeah, check us out at recteq.com. Would love to. And, if you have any questions, we are all brand representatives, whether you're finance, marketing, or customer service person, and all of us grill on our Recteq every week. So we know a lot about it. So reach out to us anytime. We're happy to, get you into the Recteq family.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to my next grill being a Recteq. So I'm about to get ready for the summer. Yeah, absolutely. So, Michael, thank you so much. And otherwise, for the viewers, please stay tuned for many other videos in this series of the backstory on marketing. And please visit marketingmachine.prorelevant.com to download the first chapter of the book and other valuable excerpts. And also, don't forget to sign up for more episodes in this video series and also in the podcast series. And if you like this one, and I especially did, please rate it with 5 stars. Michael, thank you, and thank you to everyone on the line.
Thank you, Guy.
Thank you.